at City Hall. This is the Public Art Advisory Committee, Monday, May 19th, 2025 at 5:15 p.m. This is a hybrid meeting. The public may join us in person at Brisbane Annex City Hall, Annex Conference Room at 25 Park Place, Brisbane, or they may join us via Zoom. For roll call, consider any requests of a committee member to attend this meeting remotely. We have none. Chair Glassman is absent today. Councilmember Davis.
Here.
Councilmember O'Connell.
Here.
Park and Recreation Commissioner Sewell.
Here.
Park and Recreation Commissioner Sims.
Here.
Committee Member Kelstedt.
Here.
Committee Member Salmon.
Here.
Okay. Do we have an approval of agenda?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Okay.
Well, wasn't it their discussion if we were going to remove item D?
Yeah, so we were thinking that perhaps we would move item D because Chair Glassman isn't here and she may be time for reappointment at the same time, so possibly do it at the same time.
I say we approve it with the removal of D.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Approval of minutes from April 28th, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
You, no.
Yeah.
Okay. So welcome new member, Park and Recreation Commissioner Julie Sims. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to participate and to learn as much as I can. I love what's happening in Brisbane with art, so this is super exciting.
Weren't you here last meeting?
No.
No, I missed it. I'm here.
Okay.
It was
It's
nice,
already,
yeah.
it's like, I just feel like you're part of the group.
It's okay, you can be living
Yes.
with me.
She's been here since the
It's like,
beginning. You just don't
now-
know.
I'm pretty good.
She was hiding.
She talks through me.
All right, well, welcome. Item E, receive an update on the Alvarado to San Benito Stairway project.
Yes, so that project is moving forward. I spoke with Deputy Director of Public Works Karen Kinzer last week and they have a contractor lined up and they've done kind of some initial site prep work. So that's very exciting to see that moving forward. And at the recommendation of Diane, and I think we talked about this as a committee, the artist that will be doing the mosaic for the stairway wanted to give the community an opportunity to get involved and be part of the art.
Cool.
So we just pushed this out to the public. We have collection bins at the pool, the Sunrise Room, and here at City Hall. So people can drop off ceramic or porcelain tiles or glass marbles that could potentially be incorporated into the mosaic on the staircase. So we will accept donations through the beginning of June and encourage the community to donate materials that they have that could potentially be incorporated. So.
Dang, I have a vase, but no vases, right?
Nope.
Right.
No, 'cause
Yeah.
that's pottery.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's gotta be really flat.
flat.
Like tile to
Mhm.
make sure. I have a question. So do they feel that they're gonna be able to finish it in time for the funding? Remember, they had to have it done.
Yeah, so they got an extension on the grant, so they have a little bit more leverage with timing than
And
initially.
when is the extension until?
I think it's through the end of the year,
Oh,
so that gives.
So
more
my
time.
next question is. Just because of my concern, because we've got these artists dangling now, if you realize, because they're not gonna go in until the stairs are done.
Yep,
And I don't know if that affects their personal life in terms of new work, or how does that?
they've been
I
in,
would just like some information on it.
Yeah.
Because that's,
they've been in close contact with the Public Works team, because they have to in terms of the
Yeah.
construction and the logistics of that. So they're well aware of the timeline and it being a little bit further into the year and still are fully committed. It's still the intent of Public Works to push this forward and hopefully have it completed, maybe late summer, early fall. So
because
that
then
we
the
can.
rains come and then they're
Yeah.
done.
Yep. We're also kind of at the mercy of PG&E and getting electrical to the site because that will impact the lighting that will be there. So we're doing our best to drive it forward as quickly as possible, but happy to have the additional cushion of
So
time.
what is the other holdup besides PG&E?
There
the
isn't,
work?
just the contractor. Initially, the grant funding was through this fiscal year. So they've been able to get an extension to allow a little bit more time. I know that when they had inspector come out on site, there were some tree roots from an adjacent property that were encroaching on the stairway. And so they kind of have been managing through that as well. That's delayed a little bit, but beyond that, they're still moving forward.
And do we have some leeway? I mean, here's an example. What if one of our artists who's doing this says, oh my God, I got this great gig, job, I need to be gone, and we're ready for them to, let's say, tile or put in the work. And they're saying, well, I need to be across country or somewhere else doing something that is on time. I think that we would have to, because we've pushed it back, be understanding of that. I guess that's exactly. what-
Yeah, I mean, and there's language within the contract to have that.
To make sure the language in the contract. is-
So,
Yeah.
so there was something that came up and I'm not sure. I think Madison and I were made aware of it. I'm not sure if anybody else was. Is that, Helga now wants
Oh, yeah.
those trees removed.
When before she was
And
like,
I'm assuming
Yeah.
she wants them removed at our cost.
Mm,
But aren't they on public
Oh, sure.
right away?
no, they're
on
on
them.
private property.
And then that's. They're on private property, but their roots intrude into the stairwell project. And then the city engineer or someone, I don't know who, thought that perhaps those roots, once they whack them off for the stairway project, might make the trees untenable.
Mhm.
But I don't know if there's funding to remove two ginormous,
right
Not
about
only
it.
public arts, for sure.
two
It's outside of our-
ginormous redwood
Yeah,
trees.
down-
And so I
outside
don't
of-
know what
That's
Yeah.
public works.
that is going to entail. I saw a brief little email or text about it, but I didn't hear any details, but
Yeah.
that could be some little monkey wrench. thing.
Yeah,
Didn't she come to this meeting
She
saying
did.
that she loved the trees, she wanted the trees, and then she came to our council meeting and was like very adamant that the
That the
trees
trees
stay,
stay,
she
yes.
loves
Yes.
trees, and so when I got that email, I was like, am I tripping? Did I remember this
No,
wrong?
now
She
she's
did.
realizing that
That
they might get, $40,000 worth of work out of the city.
Okay, so have you
I
heard
haven't
this?
spoken with Helga. I'll circle back with Public Works and see if they can provide an
That's
update
to
about
them
the
I
too.
trees.
just, again,
Yeah.
it was just a little blurb that I saw over the
Yeah.
weekend
Yep,
about, oh, now Helga wants her trees removed.
yeah, I'll see if I can find some update there.
I mean, I'd hate to have that stall it out.
Yeah. Further.
Maybe 50-50.
Okay.
I'll have a couple.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
All right.
that's my 2 cents.
So the contract does provide, my bottom line is if the artist, for some reason, they're supposed to start an example January 2nd. And they have a job, a paying job, it
Mhm.
starts January 3rd, and they say to us, I can't start until March 2nd. It's in the contract that can happen,
I'll have to.
because, could you look,
Yeah, I'll
because
go
we're
look.
pushing them out of the timeline of what our expectations were of them. And I think we need to make sure that we
Yeah.
are
I
considerate.
think at
and
this
aware.
point, we're not that far beyond what we said we were going to be
Oh,
doing.
okay.
Because we knew that, well, we were hopeful that the construction of the stairway would occur by the end of the fiscal year, which
Yeah.
is June 30th. And that they would then install afterwards. So we're not that far off from the original timeline. Neither of them have given any indication that this presents an issue for
Okay.
them in terms of their
I
schedule.
think they would, it also, if they had something that was coming up and they thought that it was
Yeah.
encroaching, they probably
would
would have started to be
communicate
like,
that.
just so
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Got
Yeah.
this
Well,
coming
you never
up.
know, could come up tomorrow.
Yeah.
For them,
Mm.
you know what I mean? I mean,
Well,
they're
it's a-
continuing to look for work.
Yeah.
Work.
Yes,
Yeah,
correct. Yeah. And I know there's a provision in the contract that they have to notify the city within X number of days if, so.
Okay.
But I'll revisit just to make sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Is there any public comment on this item? Okay, great. Item F, review the existing public art ordinance and implementation guidelines and consider updating to ensure consistency with the newly adopted public art master plan. I think you did a really good job.
Thanks.
Please do.
So we brought this to our last meeting, the implementation guidelines, and solicited your feedback and comments to make sure that what's stated there is reflective of what's stated in the master plan. So we incorporated some things that we felt were necessary to replicate the content and make sure that it was consistent between both. Those are redlined within this document for your review and consideration.
Red and
I
green.
welcome any additional comments or proposed changes, and then ideally, you would make a recommendation to bring this to city council for their approval.
I like that you referenced the process now.
And then also the recommendation of just direct people to the master plan. So that's in there a couple times and will be live linked in the PDF so people could just click on it. Yeah,
Cause then you're revising and revising. all the
Correct.
time, and you're
Yeah.
just referencing the living document. So that
Exactly.
you don't have to keep going back.
Yep.
And adjusting.
I think that came from you, so thanks, Terry.
Yeah.
No worries. I think the language, and I looked at it online, and I think the language is good, and I'm sure that if it goes back to council, that they will look at it, and if there's something that pops out at them,
Yeah.
somebody will
Let us know. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And when you did this, did you have legal or planning or anybody review this?
Legal
or-
hasn't looked at it yet. Nope.
Okay.
We can do that before we bring it to council.
Yeah, so let's say yes.
Okay, so are we recommending to council? Is
Yes.
everyone good?
Yes.
Should we take public comment on this too?
Yeah.
All right. Recommendation to council,
Do we
Councilmember
need to take
David.
Public comment? or-
Oh, yeah. Is there a public comment? Okay, great. So Councilmember Davis,
Aye.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Aye.
Park and Recreation Commissioner Sewell,
I,
Park and Recreation Commissioner Sims,
Aye.
Committee Member Kelstead,
Aye.
Committee Member Summon.
I,
Review by legal. Okay, item G, review priorities from the Public Art Master Plan and determine project direction over the next year.
Okay, so just.
today or starting in 2026?
Just for background context, for those that weren't here at the last meeting, we extracted the priorities and recommendations from the master plan, merged them into one shared document, and then kind of walked through to identify priorities over the next 1 to 3 years, 4 to 6 years, 7 to 10 years, and grouped them in that way. And then just kind of provided some general direction, which you can see in the notes about each of the recommendations. I numbered them as well, so hopefully they're easier to reference now instead of having nothing assigned to them. The first group that you'll see was within the 1 to 3 year time frame, and then the fiscal year work plan designation, either fiscal year 25, 26, 26, 27, or 27, 28, within those 1 to 3 year time frame. And then I didn't delve deeper into the 4, 6 years because I think at this point we're just looking at the short term. But can certainly open it up to conversation. Hopefully this will help kind of provide a roadmap moving forward for public art committee meetings and direction to staff on various projects. So
well, you know, some of these recommendations are really on you guys. So I
Yes.
hesitate to be quite honest, to say what I think is important. I think we need to hear from the staff on what they say, because if you look at it, a lot of it's on staff.
Yeah.
And unless there are like 9 of you, I'm not sure
Yeah.
with everything else you have to do.
We appreciate that.
yeah.
Well, we can appreciate it, but I want to make sure that you're not in the place while we appreciate it.
Yeah.
That's impossible.
Perhaps it's how my brain works. But to me, having the different color codes as to what they're supposed to be doing makes it really hard for me to understand what this document really is. And I don't know if anybody else feels that way, but it's not something I can look at and say, oh, and categorize it, because it seems really scattered to me.
Okay,
Is there a way I should be looking at this that it won't look like somebody just made everything explode on the page?
By the year.
I think by the fiscal year.
Yeah, look by the year.
Like numbers 1 through 9 are all priorities or recommendations that you all identified as near-term or short-term things that we could accomplish realistically in the next fiscal year.
Okay,
So you're
Okay.
asking what the committee wants to prioritize next, right? Is that the ask?
Yeah, well,
Within this year.
you did some of that work already at the last meeting. Yes, in the next fiscal year, 25-26.
so like looking at number one,
Mhm.
That's the staff thing.
well, research costs, I don't think we really need to research costs. I think we should use Google Maps since it's free and accessible.
Yeah, boom.
So,
Yeah,
so can we just
Yes,
take all the staff doesn't need to research it. Let's go with free.
works for me.
And we're already using it for the
Yeah,
hydrant.
we're using it for the
It's
hydrants.
just consistent with what we're
Yeah.
already doing.
Right,
hydrant.
but I mean,
But regardless, like that's a staff thing anyway. That's not even us as a committee. We're
well, we'd have to plop down the pins on the Google map.
yeah, but that's them. We're not doing that.
No, I know, but we're asking them
Yeah,
to
do
do
it,
that
yeah.
instead of research.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
More to do it than research.
yes.
So no research.
Um,
Well, yeah,
To me, like the next big thing is number 3.
Yeah.
Because that provides direction for that's gonna provide direction to this committee to determine what our next project is. Like the unveiling for Alvarado to San Benito, that's gonna happen when it's
yeah,
gonna happen.
yeah.
The monthly updates, staff's gonna do that. Specify what's included in temporary or pop-up art, like that's an internal
that's you
discussion we
guys,
could
yeah.
agendize.
Yeah.
But I think that it's good almost for this committee to have 2 kinds of work happening at the same time.
Yes.
One is project related and 2 is maybe policy related. And there are some policy things that we got to work out. But I think to have those in tandem, and sometimes we have one meeting that's really focused on something that we're working on, a project we're working on, and then the next meeting is a little bit more sterile. And so I think to have those 2
Yeah.
things.
So like
going
item
on-
5 is develop a policy, something like that. You guys should
Yeah.
probably work on before something else pops up and we don't have a policy
Mhm.
around it, for example.
And so like even number 7, like you almost wouldn't even do number 7 unless you heard from the community
that they want to see that.
that they want to say, so if you said like, I wanted to, where do you want to see public art? Crocker visitation behind at the park, right? Let's say you gave people options and they all said Crocker. Then, or you have a majority said Crocker, then maybe you jump to number 7, or a bunch of people said visitation. Then maybe you start looking that way because that's where the community is telling you to even go.
Mhm.
So how is
Thought about
2 and 6
What?
different?
They're not, they're just in different
Yeah.
categories, meeting the same goal.
They were in
I
2
think
different
that here's
priorities.
what I'm also hearing, you're looking to have the community drive the committee, as opposed to the committee saying, this is what's interesting to us first.
I think that that's what they said. That's like one thing they really said
yeah.
to us. I felt from 9 Dot Arts was like, try to pull in the community as much as you possibly can. And so I think an easy thing is to say location, what location would you
Well,
like to
but
see art?
here's the other thing, just for discussion, we had community who came in and said, we would really like to look at the front of town
Yeah, we
and
did.
do something.
yeah,
We totally
So,
did.
the signage.
so that should be something that we should be investigating, but.
And maybe we put that as an option, but that was 2 people.
Yeah.
Right, but the point was, we haven't had no one else.
That's true.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if we're if we're looking at community, then that's one way. If we're looking at our own kind of, I shouldn't say our own, but the things, the places and the ideas that we talked about, then we just have to also say, I mean, I think both things can happen at one time, is
I
I guess
agree.
what I'm saying.
Well, like the stairway, right? That
Mhm.
we're gonna do another stairway because we're gonna get funding for that stairway. So that's something that's like, as a committee, we've identified stairways are a place that we want to invest in. And so we will get another project
Right.
going in a stairway. But until that happens, where else might we do it? And
That's
should we
my
pull the
point.
community?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think we should.
And we should, I think we, should investigate those places. I understand that part of it with the front of town and the idea of public art was, well, is that gonna be the front of town? But I'm like, well, 1961, if everybody had said, well, in 1961, when they made it the city, oh, we don't know where things are gonna be, nothing would have happened. So maybe the RFP for the front of town is to say, well, can
Give
the
us
public art
idea.
piece be moved? So that we can stay up in case something, without stopping to find out. Because there's so much going on, and there's so much going on that that as a committee, we go, well, we can't think about this because this may change or that may change.
Well, I
May-
think there's a difference between saying things, this may change, or change is imminent. And with the front of town, with not knowing what the B of A is going to do, what that site is going to do, and they're still doing pop-ups with that, I think it would be premature still to say that's the next focus for art in the city, is for that particular space, when there's other spaces
That
that
are ready.
are
That could be
less,
ready.
that
Yeah.
can be ready
Yes.
quicker.
Like we have
But I
Firth Park
do
pieces,
Agree that having,
mhm,
Benches,
um,
stairwells.
benches.
having, a community survey about what would you like to see, or where would you like to see something developed? And of course, it's gonna be the easier things that people will say, oh, well, we needed a skate park, or we need it here, or we need it there, things that have already been put into the consciousness of our residents.
Mhm.
But I think it might be really good to develop some sort of survey that brings in some besides the obvious, some areas for art, besides what's already in the consciousness of the public,
We have a
the
list.
bathroom. Well, yeah, we do have a list. And I think that giving people more options than, what they might have already been thinking about. But
Didn't
certainly
Didn't Nine Dot provide that already?
Yeah.
they've
Yeah,
already
yeah, we
done all
have
that.
a
They
list
say
of
we've
where
done all
people
of
have.
areas.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
that's,
So
that
we-
was part of their.
Yeah, that we've
survey.
done all this, so if we want community input, now I guess my question is, are they gonna list where's the next place that we should consider? Is that the community driving the horses, so to
It's in
speak?
tandem. I think that like the community can, I think us
I'm
can
not opposed
shortlist.
to either way. I'm
I
just-
think
The
we can
places that
shortlist
people said they
like
would like
3
to see.
options.
Okay.
So that we are like, we're saying, hey, we think that these are really 3
Ready.
great
Mhm.
options, that this committee is prepared, these sites are ready, instead of giving,
Mhm.
maybe the committee is
Yeah,
undecided on Bank of America, and so you're not gonna put it as a choice
Yeah.
if
agree.
that's how the committee feels. But if there's 3 places in town, Firth, the park, whatever, we put it and then let the community go, then no matter how it shakes out, we're already prepared to deal
That's
with
what I
that
mean,
place.
yes.
That makes sense.
That's probably a good approach, yeah.
I agree with that because I also think like you shouldn't ask for feedback that you're not going to necessarily get.
Yeah.
So that's a nice way to
Putting
do
up
it. And
is a good
maybe
thing.
in addition to surveys, because I do think there are a lot of surveys.
You're a survey heavy town.
We are
Well,
survey
right
heavy.
now at the heavy, I was gonna say we might have to wait like
Yeah.
a month or two.
It feels like we were
It's a little
just
heavy
talking
right
about
now.
the art survey. There could be like also outreach, just where we have the opportunity to
To
provide
speak with people.
and yeah.
The park, like we did last year,
Mhm.
when the cost in the park happened and talking to people.
Or just our conversations. That's why I brought up the front of town, because that's
Yeah,
the
it really is the
conversations
only place
that
to
I'm
do it.
hearing.
The Public Works, people love that we're collaborating with Public Works and offering 2 solutions. So those projects are really interesting
Mhm.
and great to get us going on to
Mhm.
practice.
Mhm.
And how could the public not agree with any of it, right?
Well, as we find out.
Well, trees,
Right, I'm gonna say, as we find out.
Or it could be, you could say like, part of the survey could be, do you want a area specific art like Crocker visitation? Or do you want a program like benches, like stairways, like whatever? that could go all throughout town. Hydrants, right? They're all throughout town, but they're one cohesive thing. Or should we invest in like Crocker, that's just in that area. But benches is a whole citywide program. And so I think it would also be great to get feedback.
It's a
from the team.
citywide program because it's in different places.
Because it can,
Even if something's in one place, it's still a citywide.
I guess I'm
Do
not
you know what I'm
phrasing it
saying?
right. Location based versus something that
covers
Could
more
be
multiple
anywhere.
can be put anywhere. Benches could be put anywhere. So then if you were to say like, oh, the options were Visitation, Firth, and Crocker, then, you might be looking very specifically at those areas, or you could say alternatively, would you rather us focus on a program like Stairways, Benches that could
That's
go
a good
any,
way of looking.
that could go in a lot of places. And so that's also steering us to if we're thinking that like this, or are we thinking very
Not too
specific?
bad we didn't have it.
Does
We could
does
have had
benches
400
have to go to Public Works?
This past week.
I think we would want them to be
But
part
all
of the
from one,
conversation,
yeah.
yeah.
A lot
But
of
I
it's already-
but I think there's
Slightly
minimal,
specific group.
Well, it would still
structural
be
things that they would
450
meet,
more than
you
we
know, like
had
when I was in
before.
Chico, they have a
It's like,
benches
oh my-
program and each
We would
artist
have
has a
specific
different
group at Sunrise
bench
Group.
all throughout like downtown
We do.
Chico.
Then
But
we
you know,
got-
then sure they have minimum specs that they have to
dimensions.
meet,
Yeah.
but you know, some were murals, some were like, a bear seat, like, or something else was like all just metal work, all different benches, so. They had a
That's
really, really
really
robust
cool.
I
program
think a
there
lot of
at
these
Chico.
pieces are gonna be public art. Is gonna have to tie into Public Works.
Mm-hmm.
Almost
Yeah.
all of it.
All of them.
Well, how they,
Absolutely.
They
That
have to
would
be
cool. I
installed.
mean,
Yeah.
And then you start to look at those things. I mean, you look at like the Hearts in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example.
Yeah.
It's a
That's-
perfect example.
Benches is an easy win to connect with the Ridge, because they have a lot of existing benches, and hopefully, the HOA would be willing to collaborate and maybe swap some of those existing ones out
Yeah.
in favor of.
Well, can we all maybe
Age-friendly
just make a
program, too.
list of what we want? If we needed a survey, you want to wait, but we should at least put it out, and I'm fine with, because I know the staff is. But maybe as a committee, we should decide how we want to do this survey so that we move forward.
Do we need a survey? I mean, benches are gonna be a win. I'm hearing Karen's voice, like. you're not-
I know you
They're
dropped off
sticking out.
already though.
Yeah, but
But-
how could we lose?
But at the same time, I heard they wanted to hear the community.
Gives,
That was-
We define the
go.
community as being tapped out through survey, so
If
maybe
anyone complains about
using the
bench,
survey that we
Just
already
saying.
have.
I've always been that feeling like, let's just do it. It's a great
I
idea.
agree.
But I feel like Nine Dot Arts really tried to get us to think, how can we?
But
Involve the
we
community.
come up with
Involve the community
simple
more.
Or we can
project
look
or
at somebody
simple
when we start to
options
do the
that
process.
people
I mean,
can
there's
pick
another
up.
way.
Community
There's
is-
ways.
Agree with that,
Community
like a
is
simple
totally-
one question
Yeah.
among these three things,
Which
is
one
most
would you
appealing
raise
to
first?
us.
Or
Yeah,
two questions.
Yeah, or
like,
2 question, but no more than that.
alternatively, would you
Yeah,
rather
the 5
have?
minute survey.
No, no,
Yeah.
no,
That's it.
and
No,
yeah.
and
least
move on.
five,
I think at
then-
least 5.
Okay.
Okay.
Until I just got.
Well, is that something that would be high on the list to kind of get that ball rolling, like maybe kind of get another brainstorm draft at like the June meeting?
You could even have
or-
that be in
No.
one question. You could say like, do you, you have your 3 locations, and the last choice is like, no, I would prefer
Yeah.
a citywide program like benches, stairways, whatever. You have that
That
be
seems complicated.
okay.
Still like the same, these 2 question with
Okay,
3
two,
option.
two-
2 question with
yeah.
3 options.
Done.
Yeah.
So I think that getting a survey is important to us, so that should be one of our
Yeah.
our
Mhm.
top
Yes,
goals.
that-
And I think that install and unveil and host and unveiling are the same thing, so I
Yeah.
say
those
we
two.
line off number 6.
Yeah, 2 and 6 are,
One more piece of feedback on surveys. That communication survey, whatever that program we used was very,
Engaged or something.
it was not good.
No.
Like
right.
it confused me.
And you're a surveys person.
Yes, so I think I look for something.
you should put in a,
Send it to Jeremy.
or no, or work with Caroline, because maybe it was maybe not set up, because she kind of leading it.
Yeah, you had to do a lot to sign in.
I,
Oh, the
Yeah.
program itself, so
Yeah,
maybe
the
work with,
program itself
make,
was
maybe
frustrating.
talk with Caroline, maybe there's some settings that should be
Yeah.
Well-
modified or something.
and another thing, I don't think that we can really directly go to Caroline.
Mm.
We need to
Mhm.
route it so that we're not putting work on somebody that
Correct.
the city manager doesn't know.
No, absolutely. Yeah, I was just thinking on that survey,
Yeah.
just reach out to Caroline, maybe there's something, that program that can be modified or
Yeah.
not require like a sign in or something.
Well, you know, the one thing, some of them is that surveys, you don't want the same person going in with, you know, and skewing the survey results.
True. Mhm.
So it makes it where sometimes those kind of things need to be in there, but I don't know, I just don't take the survey, so can't tell you how hard.
One solution.
Same.
Well, I mean,
But it's like, I don't take them either because it's really not my place.
Well, you all have a voice where
We
you're
have a-
getting.
yeah.
You would tell me, like, like, I don't need to skew the results of what I
Yeah.
think. Like,
I'm
it's not
already
my
gonna
place.
get to say what I think.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's why I can't comment
Yeah.
on what was necessary and how unfortunate the survey was, but I did get some feedback from some other members of the public that said it was a slog.
Oh, there are a lot of things on 1 to 3 years.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
the
the next,
26 or
but the
something.
break at 10 is
Yeah.
the fiscal year 26, 27.
9 is as needed. I mean, that's not really for us to work on. That's if you guys.
Yeah,
decide.
8 and 9 are
And
both
8 and 9
staff.
are not.
And that kind of comes up
So I think
as,
it becomes really
EDD.
clear what our next steps are.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's looking like we can bring back the conversation about the survey, community survey. And then at some point also bring back the conversation regarding temporary and pop-up art to develop a policy.
Just temporary.
Number 5.
I'm good. I want to get going.
You know,
Yeah, that's how I,
so,
I mean, not leave this, but I want to.
Get going on
Yeah.
projects.
Get projects
off-
under your belt.
but
And get input.
you know, if we
I
can do.
I have a question
survey-
whether or not. I think when you do benches, we're gonna include the public. But it was already a win in my mind from the survey.
Yeah.
So
Right.
we're already, so what did 9.art say we need to like get everything approved before we do it and get a survey? Or do we always keep the public in mind? So benches to me are very collaborative. It's gonna be the public, even the public's gonna supply a bench or a bench in my father's honor, or, you know, to me, that's gonna be a great community event. So why do we need to do a survey? Let's.
Well,
go.
it does say and or provide feedback on public art proposals in consideration from potential artists. So
Lovely.
alternatively, to your point, we could decide the place, right? And we could get down to the final 2 or 3 artists.
well,
And then we could let the community weigh in on which artists.
that's what I'm
they
talking
want.
about, yeah. But the other part of that is we say final 2 or 3. You have to also understand if we're looking at, I don't know how many benches we're looking at in town.
each bench will be.
Let's just say,
individual.
I'm gonna make this up, 25. What makes you think there's only 2 or 3?
No, I wasn't thinking
Oh.
about benches. Yeah, that,
Oh, you-
I was
okay.
thinking like if we were doing another
Like, it could be
stairway.
20 artists.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
That's like a rolling program.
Yeah, yeah.
But I
That's
would,
if you want them to all look the same, like all the hearts in San Francisco were sort of the same.
They're
Yeah,
all
but-
heart
Beginning
shaped,
shape.
but that's it.
And then they.
That's it. They're a heart shape, like this is a bench. That's all the
That's it,
same. The
yeah.
rest is gonna be very different within that.
Right, and do we want them to be somewhat cohesive and brand oriented, you know?
This is when we start to talk about when the artists start to give us the
Yeah,
RFPs.
yeah, that's.
That is
the-
not for us to decide on. We
I-
need to get.
Exactly, exactly.
well, we
Does
could
that
try
make- I
this
don't
with
know how to
first
explain that, yeah.
because, right, those are prepared.
Mhm.
We're thinking that we wanna,
Yeah,
the
actually,
good
that's
weather
a
is
good idea.
coming, right? We could do that with Birth where we could interview our artists. It's a small scale project,
Love it.
easy to
Yes,
There you
easy
go.
to win. We
easy,
could just
perfect.
try, dip our toe in and see how it works. And then we could interview. I mean, we're still involved in this process,
That's
right?
what I'm
We
saying,
interview,
yeah.
we say, we love these 3 people. Now let's take it out to the community. Who do you think?
And then see if the community.
No, you don't like
complains.
that?
Oh,
I do, I just don't know how long that'll take for the community to decide, but I.
Okay, well, Probably.
Well, they have to decide.
The community.
21 days to vote.
We
Yeah.
try to give them a deadline. We
Okay.
can't just wait.
Yeah, they might not be available. You're right. They might not be available once you say, okay, we want you. And they're like, sorry, I got another job.
I just want to ask a question and like,
You're
it's fine either way, but if we start asking like, which artist do you
You
prefer,
want.
it's going to set an expectation with people.
Exactly.
That they're
Okay.
going to make that
And-
choice. And do
guess
we want to
what?
do that? Like,
It's our responsibility. This is part of our responsibility to shove it off on it. I mean, I understand the community saying, let's move in this direction. And I think this is great, but our responsibility as an art committee is to get RFPs out, investigate the artists, dig into the artists, and as a committee say, this is what we're going for.
Okay, well, I'm fine with that. I've always been of that mindset. I was just trying to find ways.
Well, and the way that the master
to-
plan is written, for the selection process of
Yeah.
public art, it does integrate public comment at multiple points through
Points,
that process. So
exactly.
they will have opportunities to give input.
I'd be here.
I do love the idea of starting small. Let's make some mistakes, let's hear some complaints, and then
We're
we'll,
gonna hear
then we'll
some
do,
complaints.
that's fine, that's great, but we'll learn
We're
from
all
it.
dead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
Just to be
complaints.
clear.
There's always an opportunity in a complaint.
I donated a marble and you guys didn't put it in.
No, I
Where's my marble? I need it.
Some benches made out of redwood trees.
You cannot get it.
See, it's a complaint or a problem we have, but let's turn it into a piece of
Yeah.
art.
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Super fun.
So what is exactly his direction? Do we want
Let's
to
roll.
try to go back with, come back with like
Doing anything.
possible
Public.
RFP,
Yeah.
like 2 different RFPs for each individual piece? Is that what we're hearing for
So
the
are-
Firth Park?
Do you want to
Oh, I
just do one bench?
How many benches does it
RFP?
need?
Or
many
do you
benches are
want to think that,
Actually, probably not.
or give the
There's
option
none
that
there.
there'd be 3 benches and an RFP for, for 3 separate pieces of art, or
I think that we need to like really we need to dive deeper into a bench program.
Mhm.
I think
That's
we
a
need
good-
to feel it out
I'd like to
more.
come back and show you
Like,
guys.
where are the potential partnerships? Would we like
Right.
potential partnerships? Do we want businesses to sponsor benches or
What size?
individuals to sponsor benches? Like, do we want to map out some possible locations?
I think.
Yeah,
to
maybe
do
that
that,
would
We
be
have that on
we
Age
should
Friendly
be
already, right?
In memorial.
We have the memorial
lines.
thing set up already, so we already have it set up.
But we would have to integrate that into whatever our policy is, or get
That's
that
not what we're talking
policy
about, really.
changed to a certain degree, because we have a policy in effect right now if someone wants to sponsor a bench.
I'm not thinking like dead person bench. I'm thinking like
I
Life.
I've talked about this with this group before. I went to Puerto Vallarta and they have a park and it's all benches, they're mosaic benches.
For them, that's.
And they're different themes, but it's clear that's the hotels, the local restaurants, they are putting money
Sponsoring,
in,
yeah.
they're sponsoring the bench, and they have a little thing on there that says, has a little thing in for their business, just like we have on Best, right? Like the Best mural has people who contributed. And so do we want to think of a program that can pull funds, can be subsidized by the community, and that kind of creates interesting themes, or do we want to just not have that be an
I
element
think
at all?
that's down the
Depends
road.
on if you're gonna allow their input of what they want.
Yeah, because then it's not this committee that will decide.
Right, but
they
that's not
will
even what we're
decide.
talking about now. It's like, I think we need to talk about benches as a program.
Yes.
Okay.
There's
But- and
conversation
think
to be
about
had.
How we would like to do it. Do we start with a basic one and people enliven it? Or what do you open it up to?
Right.
Okay, so that does sound like being that is not specifically itemized here. It sounds like that
That's
would
what I'm
be for the
suggesting.
next
Like, we don't
meeting will
something
be
to
discuss
Right.
bench programs.
Yeah,
And we
that'd
can
be
come
great.
back with some
Yeah.
samples and
I have a comment. I don't want to NASCAR these things in an art committee with any corporate. We don't need the money. I'd rather the money go right to the. And if somebody wants to donate for their father, that's great. That's a
That's a
separate thing.
separate
But
program
let's
that
get
already.
let's get the
We
money
can
in
do our
artists'
job.
hands. Yeah, we don't need
do
the
our
money.
job, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even if we needed the money, the point is we still have a job. We have been given a job.
So maybe
So
staff
it's-
can look at some other cities who have
Mhm.
very reputable bench programs.
There's
Mhm.
quite a few.
And
Can
you
come back with-
can
yeah.
provide us, how does it
Yep.
work? what are some of the benches, what are some of the benches that look like in their city?
Yep.
And how has it grown over time? Because I'm pretty sure that they have different structures that I
Okay.
think would be good for us to discuss.
We also have quite a few artists in our database that we created when we published the RFP for the stairway that specifically do benches. So we can pull from their websites and provide some sample images of different types of bench materials and.
What, you're making comments, what are you
No, no,
want to share?
I just think that I agree, but I also think that we have to decide as a committee. I mean, if we're going to look at benches, and I thought the Firth Park idea was a great idea because it's already established, and let's look at getting an RFP out for that and seeing, and then from that, beginning a discussion and learning what a program is. Before we decide we're pulling in carpet, we're doing this, we're doing that, it's, you know. I think that's a lot to chew off. And also when we begin to. How does that program look? Or is it a program? Or what is it
Yeah.
before we even
Mhm.
go any farther? But
Yeah.
Firth Park is right there.
And the bench
It's ready to
space
go,
is ready to go.
Yeah.
And so we could work on that RFP, whether we pull
It's a
from
simple
the
thing.
people, we have some existing examples
Mhm.
from the last one.
For benches?
The only reason is I don't,
That's what
you
she
know, when
just
you say
said.
Yep, that would
examples,
be
all of a
later
sudden
after.
it
I
comes to me like,
I feel like this is
Keep
maybe
them-
two
Wait,
conversations.
wait, 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 wait.
Just
Yeah.
give us an
Oh,
idea
okay.
of what
Yeah.
other cities or other
Hold
people
on,
have
hold
done.
on.
I think the conversation regarding Firth is specific to the two existing art pieces there
Yes.
Yeah.
that we want to have reimagined.
We had the
Exactly.
turtle repaired and the helix repaired. They're ready to go for someone to put art on them.
Right,
And we have
and
a
then the
bench there.
the bench program is entirely a separate conversation.
But there happens to be a bench there.
Yeah, but
But
that
there's
could
benches
be,
everywhere.
Well, yeah.
but if you're gonna develop a whole
Yeah.
program around benches, you need to have additional
Oh.
conversation
Yeah,
about what
okay.
that looks like before you jump into isolating and doing one bench.
And we talked about doing a whole
And you
fence.
already
Like
have
that's
those
what we
too,
talked
that's
about
already
doing
And
there.
refreshing the.
Yeah, well,
the
let's
front
start
wall.
with the one we know.
The
Yeah.
tile wall too. I
Yeah,
think
we talked
Firth
about the
needs to be
tile.
looked at as a whole.
We
project.
talked about the
Yeah,
tile wall.
And
We
that's why I
talked
was
about the
including the bench
whole
as the whole
fence.
project.
whole fence
Mhm.
because we
Yeah.
felt it was a safety issue. The fact that there's no semi
Barrier
trucks
from Glen Park.
come down there, lose control, and there's kids playing. There's no barrier.
Mhm.
And we talked about how could public art again form this relationship with public works, and we could have
Functional.
a functional project there.
Like a fence, yeah, or some
I
imagine.
mean, sure, there's a bench, but like, I don't think we need to put
There's
more
already
eggs in
bench
that.
That's what I'm saying.
That's
It's,
though,
and-
so if
but
you
if the
focus-
bench is part of the whole overall project, it doesn't have to be part of the program bench.
See, this is interesting. We have a location
We have a
and
location
we've
with
already
a
talked
bench.
about it and it's a no-brainer to fix that.
And then
And we're gonna
people
establish the
need
bench
fixing.
program within this one area we're spending time with.
Yeah.
I think this is great, you know,
It's an easy
it's an
one.
overall location, a spot that we're gonna refresh. From
And it
head to
needs
toe,
it.
I feel like it's,
and we're gonna establish the bench program at the same time,
A way
while
you,
we do it.
a way
Well,
you
in
could pull,
conjunction.
a
In
way you
conjunction.
could pull in the community. I know we are like all about that, but we could say if we have the helix, we have the turtle, we know we're gonna do those, and maybe we have another 200,000, and we want to figure out what do we use that for? Then we might be able to go to the community and say, would you like a fence here? Would you like to refresh the tile work?
Scary.
If we want to, stay contained within a budget and we know we can't do everything, or would you like a bench?
Mhm.
That might be a way where we could go to the community and say, of these three options here, how should we, what should we incorporate? Because
And then-
I'm hearing 5 pieces now. I'm hearing a bench, a fence, a turtle, a helix, and a
Stairs,
mosaic.
yeah.
That's a lot of
Bond with the
things.
coin.
in one
Yeah,
area.
already in one area.
And already there's a lot of money spent in a concentrated spot.
And another thing on that, when we're talking about fences and art, if we're gonna, and you talked about runaway trucks and
Mm.
being ready for the worst case scenario. I mean, that's something that Public Works would need to certainly weigh in
Yeah,
on what that substructure would look like
yes.
to make it, now, if it's fully loaded dump truck, I'm not sure anything would stop it.
No.
And it's sort of like the bollards that keep getting knocked down and now they're putting in a giant rock.
I was thinking we might just have to put in big rocks just all the way along inside. Could be artful, but.
And it could look like riffraff. whatever it's called. The stuff at the shoreline. Anyway, so I think that
Mhm.
trying to figure that should be priorities for us in the next work year is to look at a benches program and how it affects with what we already have on the books as far as, we would want to know whether we incorporate it or not. Sponsorship, honorarium, that kind of thing. Because that's not really necessarily public art if you're just taking and putting in
Slapping a
loving
date,
memory of,
right.
Herman,
Yeah.
on the edge of the bench. That's not really art.
So the person there remembering this possibly, but I agree.
But again, it's not really art. So I think we would
Mhm.
really need to look at what we have in place already for if someone wants to sponsor or not. And, some things I know in our sponsorship regulations that we have, it couldn't be naming things or somebody alive. And there was a lot of rigmarole about what would be allowed and what not.
The donation policy, yeah.
And looking at how that could or would, or even if we don't want to have any overlap between art and honorarium. Um,
So, okay, so just for clarifying, does it sound like we want to maybe come back with two RFPs for one for each piece, at Firth Park, and then either begin the discussion about the bench program or start working on the policy about temporary pop-up art, which is on the list.
Wait, what?
I'm just trying to,
meetings.
yeah, I'm just trying to think of two items. We're not gonna be able to do all three, so I'm just making sure we're just on,
Oh,
yeah, I mean, the
Was it
policy
temporary
could come
pop-up
later.
art?
The temporary pop-up art could come later,
yeah.
too. It's fine. Look, I just kept kind of going
If
back.
you want to have public input, I do think the bench program, and it will be larger and needs to be incorporated with what we already have. I think asking them about where they want to have the benches, and there might be some other questions, a couple of questions that come up, but I've had people approach me on Parks and Rec and ask for benches and just say, like, I have trouble walking down the main street, and like there's no place aside from the library to sit, and on the upper edge, like I need
Yeah.
to sit down. So
Yeah.
Valid.
I think it's nice. I would never
Yeah.
thought of that on my own.
Yeah,
So-
it goes hand in hand
So
with
it's
their age friendly.
Thing that staff would have to use their GIS maps to see where there's space to put a bench. Because I'm sure there's certain clearances, we can't just plop it down on the sidewalk. We have to have where we have access maybe to wider than just the sidewalk. To be able to put benches. So
Level it.
before we would ask public
Mhm.
where they would like to see
We need
benches.
to know where
Yeah,
they
We
Anything
have to earmark them.
Can we
We
put them
have
in
to-
the swell things?
The bioswales?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
Well, they could be.
Bioswales.
A resident,
Sounds good to me.
a resident created an
Lean back.
inventory of existing benches throughout the city and identified whether or not they're on private property or public property. So we have access to that and we can utilize
Replace
that.
those.
And at least create a
Yeah.
submap of those that are
That's a
just
good
on
idea.
city property, because those would be the ones that could potentially be,
Swapped out for an art
Correct,
piece instead of
exactly.
just being a utilitarian bench.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
Perfect.
But I do think that also when we start looking at benches and art as art pieces, they have to be sittable.
Well,
Yes.
And we would
Yeah.
get that on in the RFP,
Yeah.
you would learn that.
Right.
I mean, even on the walkways, there might be places to think, yeah, I mean, when the RFP comes in, you'll go, well, I ain't sitting on that.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, it's like this.
Oh, there's stuff that I,
Keyboard.
Yeah.
most of the art is
Yeah.
like, he'd sit there.
Mhm.
Anyhow, just,
So we're agreeing that we want two art, like, I feel like that just came fast. Do we want two artists on Firth, or we want one item?
maybe
RFP
one
out.
person can do both.
Oh,
if
'cause they're
both
very
person-
small.
Opportunity
They're
for
very
local
small.
people.
I would
do
say they're
local
very
artists.
small surface area. I would think it would be one person that does.
There has
does
been a
the
call
two.
though for local artists to be able to
It
propose
could be a
things.
local artist.
And it could be, a group of local artists
Right.
who are
Could
giving
be.
the RFP
Proposal.
in
Yeah.
together,
come
who are
up
giving their
and do it.
proposal together.
I think it should
Lisa,
be
I think-
cohesive.
So what
though.
we're doing is we're saying, this is what we have, this is what we want.
So this is the turtle and the.
And
Helix.
the-
And the bench and the tile.
Well, that's my question. Are we coming back with an RFP that just is addressing the two existing pieces? Or are we coming back with an RFP that's asking artists to reimagine these opportunities in Firth, which may
That's what I
include
think.
That's
the other things we've talked about? I don't,
I feel like
That's the
those are
one that I
different
want.
artists. I don't know.
It
Those all
could-
seem like
And that's a
different
longer
pieces to me.
process
But
if you
we
want to get
don't
something
know that
going.
unless we put that out, because an artist can say, my partner and I, or I have worked collaboratively with this person. Let's do this together. Just like when we did the stairs, we didn't put it out and saying it was two different people. We got two different people. Is that correct?
I guess we gave options.
We gave options.
Yeah.
I'm trying to channel Lisa, you know,
That's good.
this little area, is the tone gonna remain the same within a group of artists? They're gonna pick a theme.
Yeah.
That little area is kind of a unique little area that already has a tone and a theme, and to have 4 different types of artists join us might not be good for that one little
Specifically
cute little
related
area
to
compared to
one
the whole path all the way around what's that path called? We just put gravel down.
Crocker?
Crocker. So that's
Exactly.
a
I agree.
different thing. This is a small little interesting
And having
piece of
one artist.
But once
land
like the
compare in
stairs,
just like the entrance of town is an interesting piece of land, right?
Then maybe you do it how you did the stairs, where like we're
like we did
looking
the
for
stairs.
possible,
But is that our
railing
decision?
work, mosaic work,
The only,
benches.
the only difference is that there are these two existing pieces that we're
Yeah.
we're
That
working
need to
with, which
be
we didn't
get
have with the stairway.
right
That's
now.
really
Okay,
the
Oh, I see what you're
differentiating.
saying.
got it.
Yeah.
That's what
As
I'm saying,
well
like,
as
these are
that
different.
ceramic piece in the front.
Right,
as
so
well.
we have existing, whereas with the stairway, we could leave it broad because we
That's
didn't
true.
have anything that was kind of
Existing.
exactly.
We've made commitments.
So it might be better to have one fairly broad, use it, letting them know using this is the existing, what's here now. And
How do you reimagine that space
Yes.
with those things?
Mhm.
Who's doing those pieces? Is that Lisa donating?
No, they
No, nobody
already
yet. We
do.
don't have an artist yet.
Got it.
We had them resurfaced and repaired because they were falling apart in
Okay.
certain areas. So structurally, they're ready to
So
go.
they're
now.
ready to go right now. If we
Cool.
wanted to
They've
put an
been primed.
RFP for those two pieces, they're ready to go. If you want to do a reimagining, it might take longer.
Should we just do for the two, like, someone's gonna probably paint. Realistically. But the other options that are there, the space, benches, some kind of fence, some kind of tile work, those are very different
Yeah,
medium.
but how do we assure cohesion
Well,
between?
once you go out with the RFP for the other things, you say, here's what's there,
Yeah.
here's what's existing, right? I think that's still a collaboration, but it's just an after.
well, the other thing is if we go out for the two pieces that are ready to go out for
We
an
could call it
RFP
phase one.
in phase one, once
There you
you
go.
know what phase one's gonna
There
look
you
like,
go.
then when you
Then-
go out for an RFP with the
This is
wall
This
or
is
the
now
tile,
existing,
then it's
yeah.
like, well,
That's
this
how
is
you do
already
it.
sitting
You do it.
here.
Layered.
What are you gonna put
Layered.
behind it?
So-
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, Terry.
Oh,
yeah,
That's what that's
So
what this
maybe that's
committee
how the-
talked about before, was
the
a phase
RFP.
one, phase two.
Yeah, the RFP would be this, giving the whole view of what the intention is, and we're now looking at phase one.
Right,
Phase two will be, and we can
Right.
decide that. and
Yeah.
we can
People
put that
might
in the
say, I
RFP.
wanna be part of phase 2.
right.
Exactly.
They might submit for phase two.
They might
Love
submit
it.
for 1, 2, and 3.
And that's how you get.
Love
more
it.
people.
This is great meeting. Layering.
That's how it goes, phases. We talked about this, oh my.
How much makeup do I put on? Now a really bright lipstick's gonna just set it off.
Right? I love my bright lipstick.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So, but to get down to brass tacks on what they were asking us to do in this was setting our priorities for this coming year.
Mhm.
So
That was it, right?
Yeah,
Harry.
you know what those three priorities are. at this
received,
point.
yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
They know,
Okay.
they know us by now. They got it in the
Okay.
first
We
5
got
minutes
it.
of the meeting.
They know the formula.
Well, it's interesting because sometimes in our city council meetings, we're all sort of adding our piece, and then we look over at staff and say,
Did you capture that?
you know, we want, and they'll repeat it back. It's like, no, it's not what we said.
Yeah.
But more often than not, they're pretty good at knowing what we wanted. But anyway, I just,
Well, I think we got through 1 through 9. That's really probably all we have to
Yeah.
focus on at the moment.
Yeah.
without our fearless leader here.
Yeah.
All right, I don't see anyone online for public comment, sir. I have no public comment via email either. Okay, does Monday, June 16th work for everybody? I think
That's
that
the
was
date of the
the date,
meeting.
right? And then I'm guessing we'd probably have a meeting in July and then take a break in August. Ah,
Well, I will be gone in August, so,
good.
and I am not tuning in from Africa for.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's right. Make sure you send me your dates so I know.
She's on the Serengeti.
Oh, my gosh.
That's awesome. That would be-
July 21st would be the one after that.
July 21st.
That's the one.
Okay,
Thanks for listening.
wonderful. That was good, you guys.
Good input.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you,
No other
everyone.
public comment. Thank you.
I like it.
Well, if I